Orphan, The Last Orphan, right? Because we often have authors on the programme and they talk about their books and their works of fiction and how they imagine life to be, and they're good at telling good stories.
No imagining here.
No imagining here. This man beside us now is the author of this book, and his name is Gregg Hurwitz. And Gregg, well, he's written a few bestsellers in his time, it has to be said. But Gregg, fair to say, Isabel and I couldn't believe it about you. You are different. You like to practice what you preach. You like to sample things. So the story of The Last Orphan, we'll get to the story very shortly, but we want to say that you experience, if you have an action scene in this, you will have experienced that action scene.
That's right. I wasn't sure it was going when you told me I was different. I'm glad it took a positive bend. Yeah, I try to give the reader a front row seat to the action, which means I do everything myself. I've been up in stunt airplanes. I've gone undercover in a mind control cults. When I was first trying to envision the Orphan X series, I snuck onto demolition ranges with SEALs to blow up cars. I've got on all the guns that Orphan X uses, but also I trained a bit in mixed martial arts fighting. And part of that is so that, you know, when I was getting choked out, let's just say, I can describe it in a way. There's a kind of specific claustrophobia that happens, that if I experience it, I can write it differently than using a sort of cliche that I myself have collected from other books or for other movies. So I always want to give the readers a sense that this is really happening and kind of carry them into the story.
And that gives, I suppose, your books a certain kind of authenticity, which is why so many multi-million copies have been sold around the world. Does it make it longer, harder, you know, to write these? You have to go off and do all of the you know, bits and bobs before you can write them.
I wonder if I actually have to do it or if it's just really fun to go off on all these adventures and get myself into trouble.
Well, yeah, I think you're doing that, and I get the whole point that you're giving it an authenticity that others couldn't lend to it, because you could cheat this. You could cheat this very easily. And I think you're putting pressure on other authors as a result. We were talking earlier about certain actors who are method actors. And you're a sort of method author, really, then.
I'll take it. That sounds like a lovely appellation.
There's that story where Dustin Hoffman says to Sir Laurence Olivier in The Boys for Brazil, Sir Laurence, how are you going to act this torture scene out, or whatever? How are you going to, what is your experience of all of this? What are you going to do? He says, I'm going to act, dear boy. That's what I'm going to do. But not for you.
Not for me. I will say, though, when I'm in a book, look, I spend more waking hours with Orphan X than I do with my family or friends, right? I mean, I'm in that world. And it's funny, because if I'm writing a book that takes place in winter, if it's in the summer, I'll get a little bit tangled up, because I get pretty far into it. And that's the good part, is when all I'm thinking about is
tell us about the orphans in this series of books.
So Evan Smoke he was a scrawny 12-year-old foster kid who nobody wanted, and was taken out of the foster home at the age of 12 and trained up to be an assassin. And at a certain point, it's for a black program buried deep in the DOD. And he's meant to go places the U.S. cannot go and execute missions the U.S. is not allowed to do. And of course, if he gets killed, he's fully expendable, because nobody would miss him and nobody really wants him. And at a certain point, his own moral compass becomes misaligned with what he's asked to do, and he goes on the run. And so the orphan program from the beginning of the series is pursuing him. But in the meantime, he has an encrypted line, 1-855-2-NOWHERE, and anyone can call that if they're in desperate need, if they have nowhere else they can turn, and it's somebody who's just being terrorized by another person or group of people, and he will come and sort of act as a pro bono assassin to help them, all the while he's fleeing the very program that created him.
Wow, where do you come up with these ideas? I mean, you were inspired with the Bond movies, the Bourne movies as well, and you've had movies made out of your books, and some are in the works at the moment.
Yeah, I have a few things on the screenwriting front, but I grew up reading and loving all those series like everybody else. I loved Jack Reacher, Jason Bourne, James Bond, and I really wanted to think about, I mean, I was afraid to write the first book in this series. I wrote 4 other novels first. I kept putting it off because I wanted to make sure I really had a handle on this character, Evan Smoke, this lead. We remember characters. You know, if you stop someone on the street and ask them what their favorite James Bond action scene is, they might hesitate, but everybody knows how he likes his martini. Right? It's the aspects of character. And there was so much for me before I started to write this that I thought, what is an Evan Smoke action scene? What's an Evan Smoke story? What's the dialogue like? What are the things that will really differentiate it and make it different? And so it took me a while. There's some amazing talent and stories out there and protagonists. And I thought I really wanted to be ready to hope that I might have a character.
And just briefly, Greg, why are you in the country? Are you doing signings for this?
I'm doing signings. I'm going to be at Goldsboro Books tomorrow night. That should be really fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of interviews and signings and running around eating Maltesers and doing the British thing.
Is that a very British thing? Maltesers, I hadn't realised. Greg, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you for popping in
Thanks
and
so
seeing
much.
us.